Fellow citizens of Uganda, my fellow Africans, international citizens and friends of Uganda, members of the press and the diplomatic community. I am making this statement while under house arrest. My home is sealed off and I'm not allowed to leave, nor is even anybody allowed to come into my residence. I'm also under some kind of electronic blockade. I'm unable to access the internet services in my house. It is under these circumstances, which have been existing since I was brought back from prison last night, that I have heard the Electoral Commission declaring the final results of the presidential elections of 2016. We have just witnessed what must be the most fraudulent electoral process in Uganda so far. We participated in this process well knowing that it was inherently fraud because of the lack of freedom in our country, freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, freedom of movement. In fact, this lack of freedom has now been put in law, although it existed even without the notorious Public Order and Management Act. So we had a very restricted period before the campaigns, during the campaigns, and as you can see, even after the campaigns. We have an election that is organized by a body that cannot, by any stretch of imagination, be considered as independent. The Uganda Independent Electoral Commission, which is appointed by one of the candidates and which serves at the pleasure of that candidate, who is the president. And we have indeed witnessed in this, as in previous elections, officials of this commission acting in a clearly partisan and activist manner to promote the interests of one candidate. We, at the beginning of this election, knew that the military and security institutions in this country have been doing everything they can to bias the environment in which an election is conducted. We have a media that is not equitably accessible to all the participants in the political processes of our country. I, before this election and during this election, have been stopped from accessing radio programs. I have never accessed any of the government media except once, when the person that erred in hosting me was promptly sacked. This election is indeed conducted in an environment where we have government structures that are fused with the NRM structures. In fact, the most important state structure, which is the structure at the grassroots called the Local Council 1, is a council that was formed before what is now billed to be a multi-party dispensation. They are structures of the one-party NRM state. They have never been replaced. And these are the ones that carry out voter registration, help in voter registration, and many other functions that affect the elections that happen in this country. This election indeed was going to take place in an environment where state funds, public funds, are freely and opulently used by the ruling NRM regime in their partisan activities. So, ladies and gentlemen, we knew that this was the situation, and part of our participation in this election was indeed to expose what the environment, the political environment in our country is for everybody who cares for this country to understand. And I believe that this just ended election has indeed demonstrated that. On the just ended electoral process, the Electoral Commission first attempted to deny any Ugandan the use of a telephone or a camera around the polling areas. Again, this was in a blatant attempt to impede transparency of the election. When that failed, the social media platforms were all switched off, and up to now have not been reinstalled. This indeed was also designed to impede transparency of the election. The popular mobile money platforms were also disabled, making it difficult for citizens and indeed actors in this election to send money to the various locations that they would normally do. And this can be only described as illegal collective punishment, which is an offense under international law. Then, after the elections, as the Electoral Commission started announcing falsified results, we called a press conference to show the world that the results that we had, which results had been announced at the polling stations in the presence of citizens and our own polling agents, the Uganda police brutally stormed our offices, broke the door. We were detained in the police cells of Nagalama, which is in the Mukono district, having been transferred all the way from the extreme end of Kampala city on the other side of Mukono, from the opposite side of where Mukono district is. This was clearly intended to isolate us and to further cause uncertainty and intimidation of the population. We stayed in prison without anybody telling us why we were under arrest. And eventually, last night, Major General Mugisha Muntu, our FDC party president, and myself were forced out of the prison cells without telling us why we had been arrested in the first place. We protested to be released without our colleague, Ms. Ingrid Turinawe, with whom we had all been arrested in the same circumstances, but who was being denied release. And eventually we were lifted out of the police station, bundled into the police van, a notorious police van that has been used to intimidate and harass political leaders for a long time. And we were brought home, leaving behind all our possessions. Miss Ingrid Turinawe even as I talk now, is still in that same prison, and still no reason for her detention has been told to her or to anybody. Therefore, I have come to ask for two things. One, that the results of the presidential elections must be rejected by all who believe in democracy, and certainly by the international community. Two, that an international commission should be established to audit the results of this election as soon as possible, so that there is an independent account of what happened in this election. Whereas I am talking to you as a person that has been a candidate in the just ended elections, I more importantly address you as a human rights and pro-democracy activist. As you know, I have spent my entire adult life struggling for democracy in our beloved country. I come from a generation that believes in democracy as a gateway to human rights and human dignity, and to the rule of law, and to tolerance and to pluralism. Any government which claims to derive mandate from its people must believe and practice democracy. No one can be a full citizen of the 21st century without enjoying the full blessings of democracy. And any claim to the contrary would certainly be false. There can be no citizenship without democracy. Today, democracy is on trial in Uganda. The evidence is all there around us. The most sacred right of a citizen is the right to vote peacefully and freely. There is no greater right in a free and open society. It is upon the right to vote that all other democratic rights are anchored. Today, the right to vote and the right to do so peacefully has been wantonly violated in Uganda. This violation should be a profound moral offense for all of us. A profound offense to all citizens of Uganda. And it is an offense to all Africans and to all global citizens. When you violate the rights of an African to vote, you insult his and her humanity, and you rob him or her of their human dignity. This was the fundamental offense of colonialism, the odious practice and the insulting belief that an African could be a subject but never a citizen. Today, in Uganda, the right to vote, the very essence of citizenship, has been violated with impunity. By ratifying these sham elections, the international community would be invited to become a partner in the violations of the Ugandan and African people. And I am therefore here to ask the international community to have courage and to defend the millions of Ugandans, the youth and the elderly, who have the courage to vote. Let them know that it's not a crime to be a Ugandan or an African. Please reject the temptation to ratify these sham elections. No one who sanctions these elections can credibly profess to be for democracy or for human rights in Africa. I'm greatly heartened by the fact that the international observer missions of the African Union, the European Union, and the Commonwealth have all in their preliminary reports indicated that this exercise has not been free, fair, transparent, or credible. I urge you, on behalf of the brave citizens of our country, Uganda, to reject the results of these elections as sham and unacceptable. To my brothers and sisters across Africa, I urge you to stand with the people of Uganda and to assert the rights of every African to live in a free and democratic society. It is no longer enough to put in the East African Treaty or the African Union Constitutive Act that coming to power by unconstitutional means is unacceptable, while neglecting the more critical and challenging area of people who stay in office using unconstitutional means in violation of their country's constitutions. This must definitely stop. Citizens, my compatriots, I thank and salute your courage, and thank you for the support that you gave my candidature, not just this time, but all the time, and for believing in democracy and peace. I especially thank you for this election because you demonstrated unprecedented enthusiasm, generosity in providing whatever we needed to make our campaigns vibrant and effective. I thank you for the vigilance that you demonstrated throughout the campaigns and more especially during the voting period. Special thanks especially go to all members who enthusiastically embraced the Power 10 system that brings us together to defend our rights. Our Power 10 will remain active until our power is successfully delivered in our hands. This is our country. We cannot allow it to be held captive by a band of people. As you've heard, we reject completely the outcome of these elections. We must continue the struggle, and it will be long, it may be long and hard, but in the end we shall win. We won the election. We shall win the struggle and have the power. So continue your resolve. Remain strong. Remain together. Our power lies in our togetherness. We will not cooperate with a fraudulent regime, and the regime cannot survive without our cooperation. We must denounce this electoral theft by withdrawing our recognition of the regime and ceasing to cooperate with it. We are going to be communicating to those of you who are integrated in our networks about our next moves, which are going to be immediate. Please remain vigilant. You must remain strong and courageous. We must finish this struggle. There can be no turning back. We have already achieved great success. The attempt by the regime and its allies to discourage you must fail. Please stand up for your country. Be strong. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that by the grace of God, we shall overcome. Uganda will be free and peaceful, and we shall all prosper. Don't forget, we are one Uganda, one